everyone, it is Wednesday. You know what that means? It's time for Humpday Happy Hour with the Dinks. Yes, this is Humpday Happy Hour with Dennis in the Know. We are your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. We are live, and we're over a cocktail. And being as that I just left the dinner table, we have an open bottle of Smith Madrone. Unfortunately, I do not have a vessel to put any of this wine in right now. So apparently there will be a duck out at some. No, JB, I see you down there. I'm not going to do that, although I have stooped to that when alone. But I'm going to go get a glass while JB is doing the news tonight, and I'll get into that. Meanwhile, it is such a pleasure to be back with you. The band is all together. Dr. Jennifer Bell and Dr. Chad Duplantis, all in the house with me tonight. We are your dentists in the know. We are all dentists. We are all educators. We are all business owners. And our job is to bring all of you in the know. And tonight's show, we are so thankful to our educational partner, Curve Dental. Several of us have used their software. Amazing. It's really changed a lot about our practices. And our guest tonight, Dr. Gary White, is going to talk to you more about their software and about their practice management system, cloud-based, and just what it's meant to him and to a lot of us in dentistry. So with that said, my friends, good to see you both in the same place.
Hey, are you guys open to a clinical question of the day that I'd like to ask both of you?
Let's do it.
Okay. So what tools or armamentarium do you currently use to try to get closed composite contact between a natural tooth and an implant? Go.
So I'm a little bit different. I'd have to probably show this technique versus, are you talking about like an interproximal composite?
Yeah, where one tooth has a PDL and the other tooth doesn't.
Yeah, I'm going to do it the same way I do all of the others, and it seems to work. I actually, call me crazy, I place a band in, I place a wedge, I get everything kind of ready to go, and I create this little piece of composite. I cure it first, and it approximates to the contact size in the box. I etch, I bonding agent, I place little flowable in there, and I shove that little piece of contact, that little composite in there, and it kind of creates the contact, and then I pack around it. And I know it sounds crazy, but it satisfies my incremental layering. It satisfies closing my contact. It works every single time. It's something you have to see rather than me explain it to you.
I like
but I've done it since dental school, and it's worked.
Were you using a sectional or a matrix?
I've used both. It works both ways. Sectional is a little bit harder, but this is going to be, in my opinion, one of the only ways to create that contact with an implant. And so at that point in time, it doesn't matter what you use, but it's going to work.
So I think I actually might have a better answer than that, Chad. So what I do is this. I go in, I have the assistant.
Was that just a subtle, hey, read between the lines?
No. Mm-hmm. Listen on.
Yeah.
Between two ferns.
I've got an entire system here where I will go into the room, make sure the assistant has the biton ring. I am a sectional matrix guy.
Yeah.
Love them. You know, you get used to something like that. Make sure that is all set up. I sit down at the chair. I call my associate and I say, if you don't get this freaking contact nice and tight, you're out of here.
I think that's an excellent technique.
That is a great technique.
Love it. That's the way to do it.
I was goofing around and I did the sectional matrix technique. I would have gotten fired for my first attempt because I did the sectional matrix technique. And then as soon as I took it out, it dawned on me. I realized sectional matrix really only work because they push two teeth apart to create the contact and then it closes back up. But when one's immobile and one's mobile, then, so then
not the same.
Kind of the way that I do most of my cases, there's sort of some amount of MacGyvering that starts to happen. And I went and said, well, I'm going to give this a whirl. And I put my sectional back in and then I shoved a super fat wedge on the mesial, which was the opposite side. Like I shoved it in between and pushed more tooth in that
Oh,
direction. It freaking worked. So I pulled it out. I was like, I'm a genius. But I really don't actually know. Do other people have better, more solid techniques than just trying to start MacGyvering
I have no
your way?
PDL anymore, but I'm sure it works.
Yeah, or papilla. The papilla is totally gone.
Let me tell you something. What's funny is that I've had 2 dentists in the past 2 weeks that are actually not just like shadows, like actually dentists that came and watched, and they saw this composite technique. And at first they thought that I was crazy. And then afterwards they were like, I'm going back and trying it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we started in dental school, and it's worked forever. The only problem is sometimes you'll create too tight of a contact, and then hydrostatic pressure when they floss, they're like they get this little wince. So you just take a little sandpaper, interproximal strip, sand the contact down to where it's just perfect. After the fact, it's worked for years. So
there is another technique where you just use docking rope as your floss.
Yeah,
and there's literally always a contact.
There's always a contact on docking rope. Yes.
No,
yes.
But it also. So, do you guys feel this way? Because again, I'm not doing as much restorative dentistry. Although I still, my fingers are still wet. I still have cases where I have to place composite. For me, it's always been a lot, even with a sectional matrix, about the burnish as well.
Yeah.
Burnishing that sectional matrix, so that you don't have that elasticity and that bounce back. That's always been a big help.
True.
I just put my big fat finger on it, like Chris said.
Big fat old finger.
Push.
Fat old finger.
Fat old finger.
Big old finger.
Yep. I always tell patients, this is the best dental instrument in the world, the human finger. So
there's so many ways I could go with
guys.
that.
One last thing for today.
We could talk about contacts all night long. I think people would really like to. I got to
tell you this one last funny story. So today I was prepping a number 15. Patient came in and was broken. No major issue. I knew access was going to be a little challenging because when you try to get them numb on 15 and it's already difficult to actually kind of negotiate the nerve, like to get into the space there that you want to be to get them numb, then this is probably going to be really tough with a long shank diamond burr. So I'm prepping and it is not going super great between the vertical opening space, the lack of ability to retract any tissue and all this stuff. And eventually I have to stand up and I'm on my head, like trying, doing all this stuff. Isolate in, isolate out, isolate in, isolate out. Like all the things are happening. I finally finished one of the hardest crown preps I've ever done. I walked out and my knee hurt. I feel like this is a new low.
I think you blew your ACL doing
it. I skied all last week. No issue with my knee whatsoever. I'm prepping number 15. I can't walk the rest of the afternoon because I did something to my knee. There should be PSAs.
Do either of you get the concentration cough where you're so engrossed in what you're doing that you forget when it's time to swallow and the spit just builds up and all of a sudden you're like, just because you're so engrossed in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a name for that.
I didn't know it was the concentration
cough. My assistant, I'll call it he's got the concentration cough. This is good. It means he's into what he's doing right now.
Man.
That's really great, actually.
That is good.
I definitely hold my breath.
Concentration cough.
Certain times where I'm like, you can breathe, dummy. Like you're fine.
Can.
I'm back and I'm ready to give it to you. I have so much to share because I have 2 weeks worth of information to catch you up on. First off, we talked about the lady a few weeks ago who got busted in the dental chair for using someone else's care credit. And she was actually arrested while sitting in the dental chair. Well, another really smart criminal got busted again after he posted a selfie. Actually, he didn't post it. He sent a selfie of himself to his co-conspirator in his drug trafficking crime that the government had been sort of tracking him and watching him for quite some time in the UK. He decided to send his co-conspirator a selfie of himself in the dental chair, which gave an identification to his face and his location. He subsequently has now been sentenced to 6 years in jail because he decided to take a selfie in the dental chair. At first, when I saw the story, I wondered if it was one of those social media posts where you say, hey, this case turned out really great. Would you mind if we pose together and we take a selfie at the end? That would be really bad. But no, this guy actually just busted himself. Another interesting story that came out this week is I love how some dentists end up being the ones that are trying to be the game changers, make way for others to have a better experience and better life than what the rest of us are currently experiencing. And so this dentist out of California has now challenged the Supreme Court to take up his case. He has a case over his 401k and the ERISA guidelines, which have very nebulous terms around where fee transactions can occur and what's an exempt transaction that has a fee and what doesn't. All these other very complicated items that I never understand when I see my statement either, but I'm really honored that someone in our profession has decided to take up this banner. So he's had a splitting decision on whether or not the fees that are being charged were fair and appropriate given the current guidelines. So he's now charged the Supreme Court to pick up the case to provide clarity and an official ruling on when 401k plans can charge for transactions. This all stemmed from the fact that he was charged $20,000 plus when he was transferring his plan to another company. The government has been quick at work per usual, and they came up with a very interesting bill actually that just went out today. This is a CMS ruling that adult dental benefits will be included as an essential health benefit moving forward in 2025. So what does that mean? Well, with ACA, the Affordable Care Act that went into effect however many moons ago that was now, that was intended to give healthcare access to all. It is now their intent to bring in dental benefit into the ACA. There are a couple interesting pieces of information within that ruling. It is not law, it's a ruling. The first is that they will expand dental service benefit within that plan. So now individuals who are enrolled in an ACA or exchange plan may have an option to include a dental benefit. I don't think many of us really know what that will look like on the ground level. Will we see those as private care plans when they come in being subsidized by the government? Really no clarity on that yet. And then the second piece actually is to increase the number of providers that they have access to. Now, what does that look like? Again, I have no idea, but there is a pretty significant amount of language focused in on network adequacy, meaning finding more providers within a geographic region so that patients do not have to travel as far to receive dental care services in their community by an in-network provider. So there's more obviously coming forward on this. This is very, very recent as of today when this went out. So we'll have more clarity, and I'm sure this will be evolving over the next 6 to 8 months. All right, the last little gem of information for the week. A statistic was pulled recently to determine who has the most favorable smile in Hollywood. Now, many of you might be thinking it's Tay-Tay because, man, it's all over the news. And there's probably others that maybe it's the titanium new Kanye smile that really has you going, or Post Malone's beautiful gems. But the winner of the most favorable smile in Hollywood now goes to Miley Cyrus. That's right. She averages 69,000 searches a month just on her teeth within the U.S. population. That nudges out Sweet Tay-Tay, who only gets 66,000 searches for her teeth a month. So in case you were wondering who has the sexiest teeth in the U.S., currently, Miley Cyrus is queen of them all. And with that, that's the news. Yeah. All right, 2 comment responses. One is to Lee. It looks like Weinstein, our good friend, it looks like it's moving from an essential health benefit to it will be a mandatory health benefit that will be included through the exchange. So for those insured through that program. And the second was from Chris on NCOL and DLR. 9 states have it up for legislation for this year. We've done several news articles so far, shows on the ADA and NCOIL and NADP agreement. There's still a tremendous amount of uproar, I think, in the dental community about what that will all mean moving forward. A lot of powerful players in this particular equation, but at least currently 9 states have it up. I think we'll start to get some more clarity on the movement of those and how much support they're going to get from each individual state and from organized dentistry as we get closer to voting season.
Chad, I think we have a friend of yours as our guest tonight. And
yes,
and the coolest part about this is that apparently there is, unbeknownst to the rest of the world, there is some really great dentistry to be had in Fort Worth, Texas, apparently.
there is. If you want, I can get you the guy's name and number.
There you
I'm going
go.
to ask him how to build a contact to an implant. I bet he knows.
I
bet
bet you
he
he
knows.
doesn't. Yeah.
Chad, you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah. So I'll let you bring him up while I'm introducing him. So anyhow, real honor to have this guy. We go way back. Way back to 7th or 8th grade, late 80s, early 90s. Became fast friends all through high school. Ended up both getting accepted to the University of Texas, roomed together our first year, and then remained friends. Finally, he got into dental school a little bit after I did, but that's for other reasons, not because, he wasn't a good student. He just decided to wait a little bit longer. I was 2 years ahead of him in dental school. And what's funny is he's older than me. So I kind of got to play the older card on him. Was the best man in his wedding, which was one of the greatest honors of my life. Been honored to call him friend for a shit long time, excuse my language. And we have had a lot of laughs. We've had a lot of fun, but most importantly, we both love our profession. Gary is the father, the husband to Angie, the father to Catherine and Meredith. He lives in Fort Worth, not too far from me. He's an excellent restorative dentist. Bought a practice in, what was it, Gary, 2001?
2001. Yep.
2001. Been there ever since. And just one of these guys that's highly respected, kind of sticks to himself, does it the right way, and doesn't stir the pot. And, I've always respected you for that. So honored to have you here, Gary. Super excited to hear what you have to say. And thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks you guys for having me. I appreciate
Was
it.
his best man's toast that good?
It's pretty good. Yeah. I may
Yeah.
have to put it out there one day.
Let's
Yeah.
get a copy.
There's
Yeah.
some stories. There's some
I
stories.
bet
we can
there's
way
some
back.
stories here, and maybe if you indulge a little bit, we can get you to tell a few of them.
Oh gosh, where do I start?
Yeah. We actually we had a lot of fun our first year of college. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I didn't even know I wanted to be a dentist then. So I had a lot of fun. So
There you go.
was
Nothing
good.
was holding you back at that point, right?
That's right. It
Yeah.
was rooming with this guy right here that got me interested in dentistry. So I owe my career to him getting me started in it. So
That's awesome.
I'll tell you all a funny story. So Gary,
great.
Gary applied to dental school after I did, and he came down, interviewed with all the right. Well, I shouldn't say interviewed at the time, but he came down and he met with all the right people at the dental school. Had an interview, decided to go to grad school, and was moving into an apartment in Denton, Texas, because he was going to go into grad school. And the dean comes and pulls me out of class, my third year, first week of school, and says, "Hey, Chad, I need you to call Gary." And he goes, "I need Gary's number." And I was like, I mean, this is before cell phones. And I was like, "Well, I got his dad's cell phone." And he goes, "I need that." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because one of the freshmen dropped out and we're going to give the spot to Gary." And I said, "Okay, cool." And I said, "Can I call him?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I actually got to call Gary the first week of my third year. And I remember calling his dad, and his dad answered the phone. I was like, "Hey, Ron." And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" He goes, "We're moving Gary into his apartment." I go, "Stop right now. I need to talk to Gary." He's like, "Gary, hold it up. I have a feeling we're loading the truck back up." So anyways, I got Gary on the phone. This is like at 4 p.m. on a, Monday or Tuesday. And they literally took the few things they had moved into the apartment, loaded it back in the truck, turned around, went to San Antonio. I went over to the apartment complex, got Gary the apartment across the parking lot from me. And they were in San Antonio at like 9 p.m. that night. We were moving his stuff into another apartment. He started dental school the next day. So
I love a story like that.
it was.
Did
it
his
was
dad
really
send
cool.
you a bill for that cell phone call? Because back then it was like $1 a minute or something,
Yeah, and the phone was directly connected to the car. With the
Exactly.
antenna on
Yeah,
it.
Hurry it up, Chad.
Yeah.
And the only other person to talk to on a cell phone was like Don Johnson.
That's
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the only difference in that story, Chad, if you remember, is my dad took me to the airport and he let me, because he knew I was starting school the next day, he didn't want me to sit in a U-Haul for 5 hours to get to San Antonio. So he dropped me off at the airport. Chad picked me up at the airport. And while my dad's driving this big U-Haul by himself, he said, "Dinner's on us." And we went to Texas Land and Cattle and had a grand old time and just waited for my dad to pull up. And one day I thought I was moving into the University of North Texas apartment. And the very next day, I think my first class was gross anatomy. So it was a little bit of a shock, to say the least.
He went from you take the flight and get some rest tonight, from hell no, Chad and I are going to Land and Cattle. We're getting canned tonight. Yeah.
That's right.
But
I think
anyhow, man, it's been a great journey, and it's been awesome to watch your practice grow. We have very similar philosophies, a couple of different practices, but one of the things that I've always said about you is that you're extremely analytical. And I mean, that's not just like with dentistry, that's with everything in life. I mean,
JB,
it's about.
Have you ever heard of an analytical dentist?
Yeah.
No.
Oh no, Jeff. Oh no, Jeff. It's worse.
He takes it to a different level.
It's like in junior high when we were playing tennis, he was worried about the compression of the tennis balls and the strings on the racket and all of this crap. And then in high school, when it was golf, it was the compression of the golf ball, the dimples on the golf ball, how the club was going to hit the ball. But no,
it's science.
It's science. Yeah, it is. And like you go play golf with Gary and he's like, "Oh, I got this GPS finder. And the reason that I bought it is because this. I'm like, shut the hell up, man. I got
Everybody has
it
those.
was $199 and it tells me how far the pin is. But what I really, where that relays really well is like, if anybody is going to make a decision in dentistry and do it the correct way, it's Gary. And when he told me that he was going with Curve, I was like, all right, I got to hear this thought process. So Gary, tell us a little bit about your practice, where you started, and where you are today, and maybe throw in the practice management software, sprinkle a little bit of that in the way there.
Yeah. Like Chad said, I bought my practice in 2001 from a great dentist who'd been there for 39 years, Dr. Bill Bonnell. And he was still using this thing was on DOS. It was called K-Comp and Dental Wizard. I know what this was. Yeah. And to determine if I wanted to buy the practice, I couldn't find any financials. It didn't have any type of appointment software to it, nothing. We still had a big paper book that, you went like this and you had to write down all the appointments. And then he had his front desk. They had like a quadruple carbon paper form that they'd slide in the typewriter and type out the schedule for the day. So I said, I did find the financials.
What was this?
What's that?
This is 2001?
2001. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, old school dentist, we even had dip tanks. So we didn't even have a daylight processor. It was dipping it, and then you had to let them dry, and it was nuts. So, but the guy had a great reputation, a great practice. And so what I did was I said, well, this is the first thing we're going to have to change, period. And I found the only company and it's a company that bought K-Comp and Dental Wizard, and it was PracticeWorks. So I went to PracticeWorks and thought, okay, if I had to transition from PracticeWorks to something else, I can do that. And I got to using PracticeWorks, and PracticeWorks is still a terrific software. I mean, it is old, but it has so much customization to it. When I would show people Practice Works, they were amazed at what it could do. But Practice Works went through a couple other companies. A couple other companies bought it, and they just weren't updating it. So I stuck with it and stuck with it. And finally, about 5 years ago, I thought, okay, let me go into my analysis mode, just like Chad had said. And so anyway, after looking at all of them, desktop and cloud, and back then, 5 years ago, cloud was kind of out of the question. But I didn't want to go to Dentrix. I didn't want to go kind of laterally. So excuse me, it was kind of a no-go because Practice Works was still doing everything I needed. And now Carestream has this other software, cloud software, and they have so many other pieces of software. It's pretty obvious that they're trying to consolidate everything, in my opinion, to this cloud software, which makes sense from a business standpoint. And so I thought, okay, let's look at it again. So 5 years later, which was last year, I started looking at all of them, and I kept going back to Curve. Curve had progressed so much in 5 years. I couldn't believe it. It looked like a difference. I mean, it still had everything's orange, right? So it still had all the orange look to it and everything. Yeah. But the charting, everything was so much more mature than it was in the beginning. And so I just kept looking at it saying, this does a lot of the same things that Practice Works can do. And it still doesn't do all the things Practice Works can do, but the potential was right there. I could tell they were on the doorstep. So it took me a long time to decide to change. And I finally pulled the trigger, and we haven't looked back. I haven't missed Practice Works one bit.
So when you bought your practice and going through, talk about the transition of all of that, because the question often comes up, which is harder, to start fresh, your own, and go through the pain of like no income for a long period of time, building a reputation, all that, or to buy someone else's practice, inherit their staff, their challenges, their accurate documentation and record keeping, whatever it happens to be. Now that you're on the other side, a good couple decades on the other side of that, would you do it different? Do you have any advice for folks who are looking at both options to try to figure out what their next steps might be?
I wouldn't do it any different. I would definitely buy an existing practice, and make sure it's not a turnkey. That's the biggest key. If you're going to buy an existing practice, don't let the guy just walk out the door. You're going to lose, 40-50% of your patients. I worked with Dr. Bonnell for 1.5 years, so we did this transition. It worked great. I mean, he was right there beside me saying, this is my guy. He is my dentist too. And when I retire, I will be here. And I mean, I think we had 93% retention.
That's awesome.
And I wouldn't do it any different. I would find a privately owned practice. DSOs are all the rage right now. But I would definitely buy. It's just, as long as the transition is there, because it's just built in, everything's right there. So
that's the goodwill. I mean, that is the value of the practice, is that goodwill transfer.
Yeah. And they have so much experience. We get out of dental school and we think we know everything. I mean, we've got the diploma on the wall and we are ready to take on the world. And you realize real quickly that you're not. And having him there for 1.5 years was terrific. And my daughter is a sophomore at Baylor, and she's pre-dental. So I'm kind of leading her in the same direction. Maybe she'll be in my practice. But
what's really funny is she was like, "Hey, Uncle Chad, can I come work for you?" I was like, "Oh, of course you can come work for me."
Well, finally, we'll have the second best dentist at that.
Right. Now
That's
you've
right.
actually got the second best dentist in your practice.
Reputation.
I'll be number 2. You'll be number 3, Chad.
Chad will always be number 3.
That's right, man.
Even in this group, he's number 3.
That's okay. Third place is still in the money. But I have a tendency to agree with Gary. I think that you know, that's the way that I would do it. Buy a practice with goodwill, buy a practice with equipment. Yes, there will be things that you want to change. And, you know, we happen to be talking about software right now. And talking about change, I had a doctor call me today and they asked me, and Gary, I want you to chime in on this, of course, because this is your show. But doctor was asking me about switching to switching to cloud-based practice management software. And I said, I can honestly tell you that it's the worst and the best decision that I've ever made in my professional career. And he says, what do you mean by that? And I said, it's the worst in that you're going to need to have your team prepared. I highly recommend buying the book, Who Moved My Cheese, and buying it for every single one of your staff members. You're going to have to be prepared with time, and you may have to have a drink the first few evenings that you get home. But it's a painful process just because it's amazing how we sit there and we look at something. In our case, we were with Dentrix ever since I joined the practice. So for greater than 20 years with Dentrix, and then all of a sudden you change perhaps the most vital portion of your practice to something totally different, that looks different, that feels different, that analyzes things differently. And it's not that it's wrong. It's just that it's different. And we know all of the functionality, but it's so hard for the team to grasp it. And it took a while. So Gary, how was it with your team when you switched practice management software?
Really scary. It was a lot of anxiety, and I had less anxiety because I was the one answering the emails, setting up all the training, talking with the people, all the Curve representatives. And speaking of representatives, shout out to my project manager, Kim Russo, and our trainer, Joyce Snell, was unbelievable. And as soon as we got on with them, the staff really calmed down and said, these people know what they're doing. The training regimen I thought was terrific. Is everybody here? Are all three of y'all on Curve?
Jeff and I are.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what are you using?
I'm Open Dental.
Open Dental. Okay. But it was scary. It was the best thing I've done because now it's over. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it was so long. I've been thinking about it for years. And like I said, 5 years ago, I looked at doing it, but I was thinking about it long before that. And now that's totally off my mind. And we're up and running, but it was as seamless. Honestly, it was as seamless as I could possibly have hoped because everything was so well laid out. And the one thing we did that they didn't recommend to us is I made all my staff members watch the videos on Curve Community before we had the training. And they didn't like it, but they're short, very easy to understand videos. And the other thing that was nice is before we did any training, Curve set us up with a demo database with our own patients. So they could go on the videos and absolutely practice and be very familiar with the program. And everybody was actually really comfortable when we had our go live date on September 5th of last year. So I'm with you, Chad. It was the best and worst, but the worst was so much more minimal than I had anticipated.
Yeah, and I almost hate saying that, but what everybody's got to grasp is that when you decide to do this, it's a huge change. And that's not to scare anybody off because we all know that it needs to be done, but you just need to be prepared for the change. And you need to have your team prepared for the change. I love that you had them watch the videos. I love that, you feel I would also agree. I mean, the team that they had in place, the practice database, that they had together was really, really good for us. As when we close, don't let me forget this, but I have something that I wish we would have done differently. That's nothing on Curve. It's entirely on us that I think would have made the transition easier. But now that we've been doing it for so long, this is our new norm. And this is what we're used to looking at. And when I look at it and I go to the ease of finding the statistics and the data and the this and that, I mean, I had to go back to Dentrix to pull a production report from 3 years ago. and it was like almost impossible for me to find. But with Curve, I can really easily navigate it. And I don't know how you're feeling. I feel like I'm totally lost when I go back to my previous software.
Yeah, same here. I've had to go into PracticeWorks a number of times, and I'm reminded every time I open that program why I switched, because I'm reminded immediately, because it takes about 8 minutes for the thing to open. So I'm like sitting there going,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Gary,
Yeah.
so I had kind of a similar journey as you did. So again, when I first put our first practice management software and the only thing that was available was DOS, and we had started with a program called Easy Dental, which really got us through a long period. But agreeing with something that you said, that making a lateral move in dental software or in practice management software really doesn't make a lot of sense. They all have pros and cons, right? So to go from one DOS-based system to another DOS-based system, I wasn't going to do it. I waited until something robust in Windows happened to be PracticeWorks, SoftDent, then became CareStream. And we were on that for really a very long time, and it served us very well. But we also saw the shortcomings, and I made it a point to, when there was a noticeable shortcoming, I made it a point to make sure that the rest of the team, was feeling the same thing that I was feeling and understanding the frustrations there, so that when we began to look, when we had started to look at moving to the next frontier, which was cloud-based, that it was something that they saw the pain points in what we already had. So for example, have you ever had to re-index all your files and your computer system is shut down? Someone leaves a station on a server-based system open, and you have to spend 2 to 3 hours, pay an IT guy to get on the phone with the software company to re-index your files just so your server can put everything out to the rest of the stations. And I made it a point when that happened to actually bring everyone together and say, listen, this is something that cannot exist in the next software that we have. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the birth of looking for a cloud-based system. And as it turned out, when there was enough frustration built up, my team was excited about the switch to go to Curve. And much like you, they made that transition very, very simple. They set up the sample practice for us with our patients in it. Same exact thing. And they were absolutely elated. I just say that it's not something that should be taken lightly, as Chad said, but it's something that when it needs to be done, it needs to be done, and it'll make you more productive because of it. And your team will appreciate it if they're involved in the transition.
Well, absolutely. And in fairness, that's not just switching to cloud-based. That's just switching.
It's moving cheese, JB.
Switch is painful. So
it's moving cheese.
Yeah, nobody likes that at all.
Well, I wish Jeff wouldn't have brought up all the, indexing and stuff, because I'd kind of forgotten about that. I might have nightmares tonight.
Oh no, that is still the thorn in my side.
Yeah. I can remember you brought up something, Jeff. I was the same way. I had totally forgotten about it. But I remember at the end of the day, the office manager saying, hey, somebody is still in Dentrix and I'm trying to close the day. We need to find the station that's open. And,
oh my gosh.
And you could walk around the office and you couldn't find a damn station. And you're just like, to hell with it.
It's a ghost. It's a ghost in the server somewhere.
Yeah.
Harry's right, though. The time, like, I don't have that issue with the Open Dental. I mean, I think Open Dental is a much more nimble software than like some of these big albatross ones that are out there today. But I worked for a practice that had just bought the new updated version of Dentrix, which this would have been back in like 2008. And it would you would hear that poor machine just rolling, like the fan starts kicking in high gear, just trying to boot up to get into the program. you were going to wait 8 minutes to get access to any of your information. Just sit there and what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
And also, I remember, and this is something that I'll bring up, and I don't want to piss or disparage any company, but I remember there were such and such practice management software experts. And if you had an issue with the server version of the practice management software, you hire an expert to come in for the day. And I think it's great that somebody was an expert and actually made money off of this, but it cost a freaking fortune to train your team for a day or two on some updates. Whereas I feel that Curve does a fantastic job of updating us as it happens. And if you need to hire an expert to come in, that's something that you just need to do because you need to do. But I find that the updating is much more fluid and much more easily attainable and understandable by your team. Do you see that, Gary?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially during all this insurance debacle that's been going on with Health Exchange or whatever it is. I think we're on Dental Exchange now. And and they were so smart to put these updates. I don't know if y'all saw, Jeff and Chad, that you're just on the computer and all of a sudden up pops a box and it says, here's our update for the day. And sometimes there were like 2 or 3 updates. And it's so smart for somebody to do that because, their phones didn't have to ring off the hook, asking what's going on. Tell me what's happening. I need money. And just from little updates like that about what is happening behind the scenes to the updates that are just done in the middle of the night. And one of the best things I like about it, and I know you can do this with remote desktop and everything, but having Curve available to me wherever I am is great. And the one thing I wanted to go online for, it happened this winter. We got a snow day. Okay. And it's not uncommon for us to be out a week with ice and everything. I was actually thinking, I want a snow day. I want to test this Curve thing out, and so we had to cancel all the patients and we sent a message through Grow and my office manager, she was at home. She got right on. We have Mango as well. And she got on her phone and we switched appointments and everything. And it was done. She had everything done in just a couple hours, had everybody reappointed. And so the next day when we were back in the office, we were all caught up. There was no scrambling. There was nothing to do. She had just done it from home. And that hit me right there that we had made a really, really good decision in switching to not only an online service, but going with Curve.
Well, Gary, Chad and I we did a presentation talking about, because we both made the switch to Curve and to web-based or to cloud-based software at the same time. And so I actually showed during my presentation what it was like, because I had actually taken video of me remote desktoping in to my server-based software and how much longer that took. And someone forgot to leave the server on. Guess what? The connection doesn't happen.
That's right. Yeah.
In cloud-based, the server is always on.
It's always on.
Duh. And so not only did it take a lot longer for the connection to happen, but then I actually showed what happens if somebody is logged in or somebody didn't leave the server on, or there's just so many places for the system to break down. And when you're talking about your team's productivity and what can happen with them being able to work remotely, I just think it's such a no-brainer at this point in the game to be cloud-based and not be reliant on the server, on the one piece of equipment inside of your practice.
I was so convinced of that I had QuickBooks, running QuickBooks for financials and all that. And it was a desktop version, and I immediately switched to online. And I am not looking back. Well. It is,
I don't know that I would have done that without Curve, though. Curve like it kind of made me see that. And then I was like, duh, why am I not doing why am I depending on my piece of equipment in my office to supply all this information about my finances?
Yeah.
I was out of the office this morning, and I had a conversation with the laboratory. We had a patient coming in at 4:00, and I wanted.
You had a conversation in the laboratory?
I had a conversation in the laboratory. I was trying to figure out whether I should go to the first, the second, or the third urinal.
What'd you decide?
I had chosen the second urinal, and I wanted to make sure that but anyways, I had a conversation with the laboratory. Jeff. I had a conversation with the laboratory, and I wanted to make sure that it was in the patient's notes. So while I'm out of the office, I'm sitting there typing up the patient's notes, and I just said, hey, if I'm not there, if I'm not back by the time this patient comes in, everything's in the notes. Y'all can handle it. That's something that I couldn't have done before. I mean, you can update it in real time. But before we get too far, we have a couple of questions, and I want to make sure we get to these before we close the show. The first, Gary, I'll ask you, you and Jeff, if anybody wants to answer it, you're welcome to. But Gary, I'm going to turn over to you first. What is Curve Grow and Mango, and how does it compare to Weave?
Great question. I used Weave before I switched over to Curve. And Weave was great for us with PracticeWorks. It allowed us to do all of the modern day messaging and things like that PracticeWorks, it was never going to be in PracticeWorks. So we really liked it. Grow is Curve's messaging system. It's like Weave. And it sends out your reminders, all of your recall reminders, your regular appointment reminders. It has live texting, so it's like Weave, but it's built into Curve, and so all of the messages that go out and come in are automatically recorded into the patient's file, which it's a no-brainer. It just does it. And when patients say, "Oh, I never got the reminder," well, yes, you did. It's right here, and you confirmed, and you read it, and all that kind of stuff. So, so that's what Grow is. Mango is a voice over IP phone system, and it integrates with Curve. So we had been using a landline still, and there had been no reason to switch. But with Curve and all the benefits, technical benefits that it gave us, it was time to switch to Mango. And now we can call people with the click of a button on the computer, and it'll dial it through Mango. And Mango has a great app. So one of the best things about Mango is it has an app on the phone, and when you dial a patient, it looks like it's coming from your office. So our staff, Rhonda is my office manager, she can call people on that snow day from Mango, and it looks like she's calling from the office, so they don't have her cell phone. And the two just work really well together.
And I will chime in, and Jeff, I know you and I both used Weave as well, but I would say that when Weave came out with all of the practice functionality portion of their app, that really Curve kind of took that over. So there was a lot that we were paying for with Weave that was inherent with Curve that we really didn't need that portion of Weave anymore. So all we really needed was a phone, and we wanted a voice over internet protocol phone. So we went with Mango as well. And Mango's grown even since we've been with them, and they're starting to push, new functionality that really is going to just, take things out, to the next level. Curve's about to come out with a iPhone app that will be amazing as well. So there's a lot of changes that are occurring, but like Weave and Curve do a lot of the same things. That fair to say, Jeff, Gary?
I would just say that Mango just integrates better with Curve.
Right. what I'm saying is a lot of the things that Weave did, Curve now does for us. So that's why
Absolutely, yeah.
that's why we let go of
with
Weave
the
and
Grow
went with,
platform. Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
And Weave's a great product. Don't get me wrong, but
Weave it can still do some more things than Grow, and it's mainly because they have that cool. Weave has a great app on the phone, but I wasn't sure if I could mention it. But since Chad mentioned it, I've got a sneak peek of the Curve mobile app that's coming out, and it's really great. It's gonna have a lot of cool features, and you'll be able to basically do everything that you can do on Weave. So they're working hard in the background. They got some really cool stuff planned.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
Do you have your can with the cord on it? Do you have yours? Put your ear up.
I don't.
Put your can up to your ear. I'm talking to you.
Like this?
Yeah. There we go. Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Chris Robinson has a question from rural Oklahoma. JB, would you like to read Chris Robinson's question for us?
I sure would. So what can anyone do? How can we work around frequent internet outages that might happen for long time spans? Many people would say just get a backup interconnection. However, that option would be cellular and it's also spotty. I'm really fed up with Henry Schein and Dentrix, looking for a viable option. I think it would also be important to note I'm in a building that I can't put anything on the outside of it. I'm going to sign off now. Over out.
Over out.
Over
Roger.
out.
Over
out.
Roger. Clarence.
Yeah.
Clarence. Honestly, it has never been an issue. We have always had a backup internet source. And even if it is cellular, you're not having both go out at the same time. There was one day where I think AT&T was down, but it happened that my cellular provider, HTC or Spectrum in this area, did not. Even if you had two contracted internet providers, it's still the comparison between what you spend on that versus multiple phone lines and the fact that your phone lines will never integrate with your software. It just doesn't make the same sense. It's just too easy to have a backup internet source and to be able to have your communication hardware be able to talk with your software. And it just allows your team to be a lot more productive.
Now, Chris, are you still using a burner phone? We just need to make sure what we're talking about here, because Chris, Chris Robinson, does your phone flip? or is it flat? This is a really serious question.
Flip phones are coming back.
Yeah.
They are.
Actually,
hey, do any of you still have a bag phone? I do.
I think my parents still have our first one.
A bag phone?
Yeah.
I better give Chris. Oh, Chris said it's flat. Chris, I got to give you some love, man. You've been such a supporter of us, and I appreciate you. I hope you know that we're teasing you.
You can't help that Oklahoma hasn't caught up yet, or that he can't get a solid line. I will say we have this issue, and it's actually, Chris, I see you and I feel you, because my second location is very rural. We have no fiber out at that location. And that has been a serious concern because we run voice over IP already. And so if we went to cloud-based software as well as running the voice over IP, we currently don't have the bandwidth to manage it. And we don't have a fiber line running in. And the fiber option that we do have is somewhere between $500 and $1,000 a month to get the connectivity to the building. So that is a real challenge for rural communities where they're still building the infrastructure in place to get the amount of volume that you need for upload and download speed.
Yeah, I think it's becoming less and less, but it still is an issue. And I think Chris's biggest concern is that what is he going to do when we're converted to electric vehicles and he has to get rid of his donkeys that draw his carriage to the office?
Can I ask one
Brutal.
more question as a non-cloud-based user that a lot of people have concern about and what that experience has been like for you guys? So radiography is always the like sticking point. And you both are CBCT users. I don't know, Gary, if you are not, if you are, awesome. If you're not,
We
that's
don't take
also
X-rays.
This is a
Perfect.
great
I've got
point
some
for Gary to
patients I would
talk
like
to.
to
All of
refer
our
to you,
patients refuse X-rays.
Dr.
Yeah.
Myrick asked this question today, and Gary can relate to it. Great question. Keep
Yeah,
going.
I'd
Gary.
actually like to send a few patients your way if you don't take X-rays, because it would be like a really good marriage. So upload, download speed, your responsiveness to be able to pull radiographs, and you've got small volume radiographs, which are your daily things that you're taking, intraorals, and then you've got the big boys coming from the CBCTs and hogging up a lot of data. So talk me through this experience.
CBCTs, I mean, they just won't go into curve. It's just they're too big.
Right.
I don't think they're
bridge.
gonna
You
go
still have to have a server on site.
Yep.
Yeah. So, or use a workstation or have a dedicated server. So, as far as other X-rays, they've incorporated a bunch of sensors into curve, so you can they bridge it through it's a little piece of software, from the company, but Schick. I just bought a wireless sensor from DCI or a DF something, and it's a brand new wireless, and it goes through Bluetooth, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it has a little base station, and it goes right to curve, and the uploads are fast. I mean, there's no delay from one computer to the next. It runs on Chrome, so as soon as you click to go to an imaging file for another patient, it's always refreshing, so it pulls up the latest data. And I don't know about you guys, but we've had no trouble with images at all.
Well, Gary, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I know for us, so a lot of our sensors that we had in the practice carried over from the previous software that we had. And so, was that their number one, we're most excited about working with this sensor? No, Curve wasn't. But you know what? Do you know how much time they spent on with us perfecting our images? And now my images look better on Curve with those sensors than they did in the proprietary company's software, because they took the time to say, this was part of our onboarding. Is like, we literally had 3 calls just about perfecting our images that were coming over from this other software. And to me, when I switch to anything, when I do business with any company, it's because not only do I see a value in the product, but I see a value in the service that they're going to provide. And that is the most important piece of technology. Technology is only as good as the service that's behind it. And so they stepped up to the plate immediately, because that was one of my biggest concerns. Are these old images, are they all crap now? Or are they going to be something that I can continue to reference? And they're like, we're going to make sure this is something that you can continue to reference. And they did. So it was a good experience.
I have the same sentiment, Jeff.
Well, one thing that we had been on forever is phosphor plates, ScanX. And I tried sensors, and I don't know about anybody else out there. I'm sure you guys don't have any tori patients, because I have them all. I've got them all.
Yep.
Yeah. So I appreciate y'all sending them all to me.
No problem. Or gaggers. I've given them all to you as well.
Yeah. It's a very interesting practice I have. So as soon as I try a sensor, just like the one I just bought, I mean, half the patients, man, they hate the thing. So we have stayed with our ScanX phosphor plates, and Curve bridged right to our TigerView software. And I mean, just one click, and TigerView comes up, pulls up the patient and everything. So we still have a server, but I'm going to get that taken care of, because we're they said that ScanX can be integrated directly into Curve. So I just hadn't done that part yet, but images have been fantastic.
I think that's great. We have a Dr. Catherine Myrick out of South Carolina that was asking me today about phosphor plates, and I'm glad you chimed in on that. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Geez,
did not
we're at
know
9:35 already.
We had so much fun.
How did that happen?
It's because just
Wait.
I don't know. That's just
Don't
the
we
way.
go? I thought we went to 11.
If you're game, I'm game. As long
Final tap? No.
as long as the wine holds out.
Hey, what's going to happen though is that the next time you two are in town, Gary's going to have to join that supper table with the rest of us, and we'll all have a good time.
That.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, he can just take your place. Now we have somewhere else we can be hosted in.
That's easy. Oh man, that's easy. Those are easy shoes to fill.
Yeah.
No problem.
Anyhow,
we only rub it the best, Gary. So
yeah,
it'll work out great.
Beautiful.
Gary, thank you so much for being here, man. It was a great show, and really appreciate your thoughts, your insights. I know Curve appreciates it, but I know that you were shooting us straight. And if anybody's going to shoot us straight about their why and their pains and their successes, I knew that you would. So thank you very much, man.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Nice to meet y'all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we will definitely be in touch down the road, because I know Curve is excited about having you on board, and we are too. So
yeah, hopefully we can do it again. That'd be fun.
Look forward to it.
Jeff, you want to close us out tonight?
Just been a great pleasure, Gary. Thank you for being with us. Great to meet somebody else who's actually had to tolerate Chad before, and we feel your pain. Anyway.
Yes.
For all of you out there, thanks for being with us. Make sure to tune in. Catch us on podcast. Guys, thanks for being with us. Thanks for tuning in all the time. Thanks for your support. Thanks to all of our educational partners. And tonight, especially, thank you to Curve. Thank you for being a great partner to my practice, to Chad's practice, to Gary's practice, and to so many practices out there. And we will see you all again next Wednesday night on Dentist in the Know. Have a good one.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession. So let's make it a great day, Dinks.